So not too long ago, I was actually doing some research on investing. I was trying to figure out what would be, some good investments to grow money, right? Like, you don't want to work forever, right? And you always hear about the 401k and all these other different things. And yeah, it's okay, but especially nowadays, like a lot of people end up actually, you know, dipping into the 401ks, like some major catastrophic event. And considering that a lot of people live paycheck to paycheck, right? I was that way for a long time. I lived paycheck to paycheck for the most part, not totally. I've always had some little wiggle room, but I was never really getting ahead, right? I was just kind of stagnant, to say the least. And so nonetheless, I started looking into other investments, and I was never really like keen about like the stock market, right? Like I knew what it was, I knew what stocks were, kind of, sort of, probably about as good as the next person, right? And then next thing you knew, I actually started doing some research, right? I wanted to, if I was going to start doing some investing, right? And the only other things I could find was either you do real estate, stocks, or essentially invest in yourself, right? And I do spend a lot of money on myself, especially when it comes to reading and knowledge. I had spent a lot of money, going back to college and on some different courses. And ultimately, I wanted to, again, branch out, right? I wanted something that would essentially grow my money while I was essentially, not doing anything, right? I wanted my money to multiply itself without me actually being there. And so I started looking at things. I thought about doing some real estate stuff, and that in itself, it requires a lot of capital, right? And you have to not only have capital, but there's a bunch of other things that come into play. You gotta, I gotta have a solid income, a solid job. And, if you do rent out something, buy a piece of property, somebody has to, obviously, you have to have somebody within that piece of property, residing there and paying rent. It has to be occupied, right, essentially. And if they aren't occupied, you will be essentially paying that rent plus, whatever rent wherever you're staying at. And so for me, it was hard. I was like, well, I can't really do that at this moment, right? Now I know it's not saying you can't do it, right? There's always a way to do stuff, but needless to say, I started looking for ways in the stock market, right? I was like, well, I came across this concept about you need to be knowledgeable of anything that you go into, right? And, if you're going to go into real estate, you should have a firm grasp on real estate. You shouldn't just go into it. If you're going to, buy a particular insurance, you should know what exactly you're buying. You should really dive into this stuff and get a good grasp on it, especially when it comes to any kind of investing. You want to know, right? You don't want to just hand your money over. And, for the longest time I did that. Like the 401k, I just put my money in it. And essentially, you're allowing somebody else to make all your life decisions, all the hard-earned money that you're putting into, you're giving it to somebody to manage. And they don't really care about your money. They care about, making money for themselves. And, that's why that you get all these different hidden costs and everything when they're trading your stocks and whatnot. And so, again, I started looking into getting into the stock market. And for myself, I didn't know what I was going to do. I had little knowledge, very, very little knowledge, right? I was never taught about the stock market much, aside from just throw it all in a 401k, a Roth, and just leave it there, let it sit, and until you're 60 years old, then you can retire. And then, so it never really made much sense to me. So anyway, I came across day trading, right? And every time I've heard that word in my life, I've always thought of a used car salesman. I don't know why. And it's just something that's been like ingrained. And I think that's just part of our society, has always been like that, right? Is that we have this thing to where people think that it's a bad word, right? Like you have this bad word. And I was curious, right? Like I was like, well, I've heard about day traders, and I know some people make a lot of money. Now, is that true or is that false, right? Because that's the first question that comes up. Like, can you really make money on your own? And so I started looking into it, and I came across this course, and I ended up buying the course. It was the only course that was, reasonably priced, right? And I started doing a little bit of research on it, and I bought this course, and I went through it, and it had a lot of basic components, right, that I could have probably picked up somewhere else. But nonetheless, it was all centralized, so it did help me, and I did get to see, someone actually trade. I don't want to actually give names, but nonetheless, I got to see someone trade live and see what they did. And, you kind of shadow that for a little bit, just try to get a grasp of trading. And so I went through this course. The course was like 8-9 hour course or something like that, and it took a while to get through. And then I was trying to do like paper trading, which essentially, you get fake money to trade with, right? And it doesn't really help because you get like this 400k money to trade with, and you see these massive dollars amounts, and then when you actually use your real money, it's not quite the same. You don't have this big a lot amount of money, right? And so nonetheless, I started paper trading for a little while, and you don't really feel it, right? And so I had learned all these different things. I was paper trading, and I was like, well, I don't really feel it, right? I'm kind of like numb to that stuff. It's like you're just playing a video game. It doesn't really matter if you win or lose money because none of it really matters. And so again, I opened a small account. I think my first account was on Robinhood, which is an okay app, especially if you're like a new beginner. There's no transaction fees or anything like that. When you get a fee every time you buy or sell a stock, and Robinhood is known for being that free, being one of the first free platforms to trade without having that fee, right? And so I learned on there, and I started out pretty good. I made a quick $800 and felt like I was doing good, right? And it didn't take long, but nonetheless, I lost that $800 about 2 months in, right? 2 months in, I was doing pretty solid. I had a couple of losses here and there, but I mean, and nonetheless, it's been 6 months since then, and I've learned a lot. I've came across some great mentors that have really like helped me like see some better ways of trading, right? And allowed me to right now break even. I'm a little bit better than break even right now. I am making some money. I'm not making tons of money, but the good thing is I'm starting to get the hang of it, and I'm not taking massive losses, right? Because there's a bunch of different things when you learn about getting into the stock market that you gotta really watch your risk management and your emotions. Once you go from that paper trading to a real account, it's very different because your emotions play a big toll on you when you are trying to trade. And so nonetheless, I've been on this journey, right? I started trying to do investing, and I ended up becoming a day trader essentially, and actually enjoying it. I do enjoy it. There are times when it can be really rough, right? You get really frustrated because you think you see something, or your emotions come into play. That's one of the hardest things to deal with being a day trader. A lot of people say it doesn't work, but it's essentially training yourself, right? Not to be over emotional, and to look at it logically and realize why the stock market's moving the way it is and what kind of catalysts come into play. And so this journey, right, it's been fun. It's had its ups and downs, that's for sure. I've had some big days, I've had some big losses thus far, and it's just my journey. Like, I essentially went into this trying to invest, and then the next thing I knew, I was a day trader. And it's hard to look back like, this isn't what my intention was to become a day trader, but I am a day trader, and I do enjoy it. So nonetheless, I have been going for just a little over 6 months now. Continue to refine. My emotions still play. You get that revenge trade, which is a lot of things that I think really doesn't help. But nonetheless, I'll talk about some more of that stuff. I just wanted to kind of give an insight onto like how I got into day trading, and it's kind of weird how it all just spiraled the way it did. And I wasn't again trying to be a day trader. I was going into trying to become knowledgeable of stock market, because I wasn't at all knowledgeable about it, and now I am, and I enjoy it, and I thoroughly enjoy it actually, and I'm making myself more money than some guy that's taken some massive amount of fee from me to, you know, trade my money for his profit, right? And so now I can trade my money for my own profit. Though I do have transaction fees now, I switched over brokers and stuff like that. Nonetheless, I mean, it's still good. It's still fun, and it still can be, again, have its ups and downs. But nonetheless, here I am, and it's definitely one of those skills you definitely want to learn, and you can definitely get a lot out of life from it. So nonetheless, this is my first video, my intro on how I became a day trader. I'm sure I'll have more videos like this, because these kinds of videos I think are more insightful. I haven't seen anything like this as far as like a day trader, right, and how they got into it. You kind of hear about it, but this is kind of my story. I know I've been kind of 6 months into it, but nonetheless, it's still new. So nonetheless, till next time, if you guys like this video, remember to hit that like button on the way out, and until next time, I will see you guys later.